Welcome to Nashville and Beyond.
I'm Brian Copeland.
And I'm Zach Copeland.
And we're a father-son duo helping people buy, sell, and thrive in Middle Tennessee.
But this isn't just about business. It's also about our family and our community.
It's a front row seat to how we live, work, and serve right here in Music City.
So buckle up as we explore
Nashville and Beyond.
So we as a family have been on a lot of vacations. We love taking vacations. But one of the things that we really don't do a lot is go to museums.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because not all of us are interested in that.
Yeah, I don't think we agree on certain vacation things.
Yeah. So
I was shocked when we went to the California last year, and the movie studio museums was on everyone's list.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed that time. But we just have very different tastes on travel pieces. And you and Greg are very big museum people. Esther to some extent, and I'm not.
Yeah. Well, today's episode is the one about museums, why people visit them, what you can find inside them, and a few of the museum experiences we've had that have stuck with us.
Yeah, and before we really get going today, and talk about specific places, which we're going to go over lots of Nashville museums today, let's talk about why museums even matter. And why they are so impactful in Nashville and beyond.
Yeah.
To the cliche there. The big piece is, we got to remember our history and culture. So many of the best museums, whether they be in Nashville or they be in D.C. or whether they be in any other country even, they show a piece of culture to us that we just can't see. Getting back from Thailand and going to some of the museums there and some of the monuments, man, if they weren't there, we wouldn't have that preservation today.
Yeah.
And I just think that is so important. And it's important that as we look at societies who are developed, that they continue, because we're in a politically tough time right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we don't remember the errors of our past, we can repeat those. And I think museums help us visualize it. Sure, we can Google it and see it, Zach.
Yeah.
We can, we can read books about it. But when you go inside and you experience it in a museum, that means something. Yeah,
and it's really good at educating people, like you said, on our history, on relevant topics of today, because everybody says and has always said that history repeats itself, and that the future can be predicted by looking at history. And so the more that you learn about history in the past, the more you can start to see signs in the present of what's coming in the future. Yeah. I love when we hear of schools that take field trips, which I don't even know if schools do field trips anymore, do they?
They do.
Well, when they go to like museums or art galleries or plays or ballets or operas or things like that. Shout out Timothy Chalamet. And I think the coolest part about it is the culture that it builds within you and the respect for culture that it builds within you.
Well, I come from Clinton, Tennessee. And it was one of the first places, or the first place to be bombed by the Ku Klux Klan for integrating black children in.
Yeah.
And so now there's a museum at the top of my old middle school called the McAdoo Cultural Center in Clinton, Tennessee. And if you see on the Disney Channel, they've done a big piece on it. There was a kid who was on the Disney Channel who passed away. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he was in Descendants and all that. Cameron, I think's his first name.
Okay.
His grandmother was one of the Clinton Seven, one of the kids who walked down the street to integrate into that school.
Huh.
So that McAdoo Cultural Center, he did a special on the Disney Channel for it.
Yeah.
So going there, and I grew up in that area, and now it's a museum. We think about the things that we're living now today, even, and say, we look at the Pulse situation in Orlando, and we live and think about the things that are happening today in the world and how those could be museums one day.
Yeah,
it's just really sobering to think about.
Yeah, in Arkansas where I grew up, we had the Little Rock Nine, and the Little Rock Nine were the first.
Okay.
So yours were among the first, and the Arkansas high school was
our
first.
Yeah.
And like some of the famous pictures that you see of the black children holding hands walking down a sidewalk, and there's white people standing around them and yelling at them. Those came from Little Rock. Those pictures and those photographs. But I don't want to get too far into that right now. sometimes, history is something that we learn about, and sometimes it's just a few feet away from us and right in front of our face. So one of the best museum trips that I have ever taken
Uh-huh.
was my solo trip
Uh-huh.
to Washington, D.C.
The family calendar.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't supposed to be a solo trip.
No.
But at the last minute, Dad had to back out, and I don't even remember why at this point.
This is like payback for like you and I'd gone to Disney or something. And so you were getting to travel.
Yeah.
We try to take individual trips with the kids. So like Esther and I are actually leaving tomorrow for a trip,
Mhm.
and so this was kind of y'all's trip together. And
Yeah.
then he got sick that morning. So yeah.
Yeah, he got sick that morning. So I flew up to D.C., had a beautiful hotel room all to
You
myself.
sure did.
It was just gorgeous. And I got to explore DC for the first time, and it was my first time in Washington, DC. And, I went to the National Gallery of Art, went to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, the National Archives, even the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And the things that I got to see and experience while I was there up close and in person were just incredible. Seeing like they had the flag that was flown on some battleground, and I forget all the details of the battleground, but the image of the flag in this room will be forever etched into my mind, because this flag is like 350 or 400 years old, and it is the size of like a basketball court.
Yeah.
Humongous. And they don't let you take pictures. I snuck one. Sorry, don't tell the FBI.
It's the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
That's the,
Yeah. And they
It's in
have
black
it.
light.
They have it in this dark room, and there's very low light, and you can hardly see it, and you have to like walk around in the room for a while before your eyes can even adjust to how dark it is in there, so that you can see it. And I know that they do that to protect it. Getting to see the woolly mammoth and the great whale skeletons that are there in the Natural History Museum, getting to see the jewels exhibit in the Natural History Museum. There was a special collection that they had while I was there, and it was, there were probably, I don't know, $500 million worth of jewelry in the museum in one tiny little section that was like the size of our church. And there were every kind of precious gemstone that you can imagine: diamonds and rubies and sapphires and emeralds and tourmalines and all of these different kinds of cuts of them. And that was just incredible. And, of course, when I got to go to the National Archives, I got to see the Constitution up close and the Declaration of Independence up close. And it felt very Nicolas Cage, National Treasure. I was just like looking around, waiting to see where the guys were that were gonna take the Constitution and run off with it.
Yeah.
And it was just really cool to be there. And that being juxtaposed with when I went to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And the way that this museum is set up is that it's like 4 or 5 stories. And at the very bottom, you start on the first floor, and you go through the history of like the African tribes. And then you get up to the second floor, and you learn about how they were taken from their country and moved over into the United States. And then you get up to the third floor, and you learn about all of the intensive slavery practices that went on and the things that they dealt with. And then you get to the fourth floor, and you learn about the civil rights movement. And then you get to the fifth floor, and it's modern day black culture, and you get to see all of these like Grammys and famous people's outfits that they've worn, and
Politicians.
yeah,
and
politicians. All the pins from the Obama election campaign was really cool to see, and it was very emotional to have gone from, reading the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. Lines like "all men are created equal" were written, but it wasn't true at the time.
Yeah.
And so seeing the experiences that other people had during that time was just, it was a sombering moment, but it was also a moment of gratitude in a way, because, it reminded me that we've come so far as a country as well. So those are some of the favorite highlights that I have. Of course, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, getting to see the evolution of flight, getting to see the Wright brothers' original plane, getting to see the original Apollo moon rocket that landed on the moon, moon dust, getting to walk through cockpits of these incredible large military aircrafts, and getting to see all of the tools and mechanisms that they use in the cockpit and how the pilots operate the planes. And, it was just quite an amazing experience.
Yeah, and sometimes it's you see these historic artifacts in person, and seeing them connects you on another level. And as silly as it is, I think about the ruby slippers from the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
That are in the American History Museum
Yep.
there.
Got to see those.
And connecting with those pieces, and even silly things like and it's not silly, but like the first ladies' dresses and the gowns that they wear to places. It's just a really cool thing that how artifacts can connect you to the reality of things. We've heard of these things. I remember like my first time going to Los Angeles and seeing certain things I'd seen in movies. Like, it makes it real.
Yeah.
And I think those artifacts make it real. But not every museum is about national history though. And I'll take a little detour here because I want to talk about Nashville. But before I go into that, there's been this movement about these museums that have popped up places like the Museum of Ice Cream in New York, the Museum of, and they're really not museums. It's almost tainting the joy of museums in some ways.
Yeah.
We went to the Museum of Ice Cream in New York a few years ago, and I guess I was expecting history and how it was made, but it was literally just a playground.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a museum.
Yeah.
But people have different definitions of museums.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a quiz today about Nashville museums and see if you can guess these museums.
Okay.
And I can already see you getting nervous.
I'm not
because
prepared.
This is not prepared at all. But what do you think the most popular museum in Nashville is? The most visited museum in Nashville is? And when you hear the answer, you're going to be it's going to be like, of course.
The Country Music Hall of Fame. Yeah.
You got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Country Music Hall of Fame, have you been before?
Oh, yeah.
In there?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the architecture of the building alone is amazing.
Yeah.
They're constantly having these great exhibits there.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of going to Dollywood, to Dolly's museum there.
Yeah.
And seeing there. So, oh, good job. What is the most prominent presidential museum in the state of Tennessee?
Pass.
Andrew Jackson's Hermitage.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Real
that
close
makes
to our
sense.
house here. Yeah. And most people don't think of that as a museum.
Yeah.
The kids at their school do a docent day out there where they give people tours. And again, not my jam, but hey, it's there. A museum that's actually privately owned in downtown that's named after a very famous country music star.
The Frist.
The Johnny Cash Museum.
Oh, the Johnny Cash Museum.
And Johnny Cash used to own a museum we're very close to here that's close to our house. It's probably the closest museum. What is it?
The Amqui Station Museum.
You got it right. I saw your eyes light up on that one. So that's here in Madison, close to where we are.
Yeah.
This one is currently under some rehab and houses the largest statue of Athena.
The Parthenon.
The Parthenon.
Yeah. We talked about that on the travel episode, how I've been to the real Parthenon, and again, ours is in much better shape. So.
What museum in Nashville is known for cars?
The Chevy Museum.
No, the Lane Motor Museum.
Oh, the Lane Motor Museum. That's right. That's right.
Close to where Micah does drums on Sundays. And a lot of people don't think about the Lane Motor Museum.
Yeah.
But there's all these cars over there, that cool stuff. Probably the one that you'd probably like the most if you visited, but this is our Botanical Museum.
Cheekwood.
Cheekwood, yeah.
Yeah.
We went to that Botanical Museum in Cleveland, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and you just ate that up.
Yeah.
One of the newer museums that's close to the farmers market that I totally forgot about until this episode.
One of the newer
Esther
museums.
just went on a field trip there last week.
The Tennessee State Museum. Yeah.
And they've got an amazing
It's huge.
And the building is gorgeous.
Yeah.
You can walk across the street to the farmers market. And then you've got that almost outdoor bicentennial mall. That's not a museum, but you've got that same kind of historic piece. It's just so cool.
And the bells there too, and the pillars, which are nice.
Yeah, the Carolines. Yeah, you've already said this one, so you rent this one. But this museum is named after one of our former senators from the state of Tennessee,
Frist.
the Frist Center for the Arts. Most people don't know, but on the top floor they've got a kids play zone. And we're talking about kids art play. So we'll go up there. They have art educators up there.
I've been in there before and played around.
It's the greatest. Okay, this is a vague one.
Okay.
But it's my favorite museum in the whole wide world, and it happens to be here in Nashville.
Oi. Favorite
this
museum in the whole
I got a call
world.
from them yesterday when we were in the car together.
Oh, you have to tell me.
The National Museum of African American
Oh,
Music.
yeah, music and history, yeah.
African American music.
African American music.
Just oh gosh, I mean you know the museum.
Yeah.
Talk about that when you first walk in, that movie that they show there.
Yeah, so at the National Museum of African American Music, which is in Nashville of all places,
Fifth and Broadway.
Underneath Fifth and Broadway, or next to Fifth and Broadway. So the way this experience works is, you walk in, and obviously it's an option. You don't have to stay for the whole movie, but I highly recommend it. You sit down and you watch a movie that talks about the evolution of music.
You cried.
And I cried. Yeah. I bawled like a baby at the end of it, because the first time that I saw it, I was there with my best friend Rachel from Arkansas, who is a black lesbian.
And
a musician. She's an amazing drummer. And so to see her reacting and resonating with what she saw in there was just so emotional for me. So yeah, it's an amazing experience. They have this gospel choir experience in there that's so cool.
You can do a DJ booth.
A DJ booth. You can produce your own music. It is awesome.
And I don't know the official name. Yeah, I do know the official name. But across the street just opened the Museum of Christian and Gospel Music.
Yes.
I haven't been yet.
Yes. I have not been either, but it is brand new. It's underneath the Lipscomb parking lot. Yeah. That Lipscomb parking lot. Yeah.
There's a museum we go to every year. You're probably not even thinking about, out at the Wilson County Fair.
Oh yeah, the agricultural
train museum.
The train museum.
The train museum out in Fiddler's Grove.
That's right.
There's a lot of museums out there, though. You're right. I didn't even think about what you're about to say. But there's all kinds of museums out there, and then there's museums that are more obscure. Not this one isn't obscure. The Children's Adventure Science Center.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't know if I can. To me, those are more playgrounds, but they're considered. We got Madame Tussauds here. Again, I've only been to the front of that one. Travelers Rest. There's so many museums around here, we can't name them all.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of museums that have specialty areas to them, so they go around single topics or eras around here, and they help spur your curiosity in a different way. But the other thing is we have quilts within a day drive here.
Yeah.
I think about McClung Museum at the University of Tennessee. I already mentioned Dolly's Museum. The people who are, if you know Kirkland's, which is a home goods store, they opened a museum out in Union City, Tennessee, called Discovery Park of America. That's insanely amazing.
Interesting.
And then you're taking a trip to a museum that's in the close drive here.
Yeah. It's the National Museum of Quilts.
There we go.
So talking about quilts again.
Yep.
I'm taking Dad Greg with me. We both just love quilts and appreciate the art form a lot. And we just got back from QuiltCon, and so I'm going to let that experience simmer for a little bit longer, and then we'll go on our trip to QuiltCon. But part of the beauty of museums, which you just mentioned, is that they can inspire curiosity and creativity. And while QuiltCon wasn't a museum per se, half of the experience was basically a museum exhibit of all of these incredible quilts. And so that's what inspired me to start doing things. I love that we have the National Museum of African American Music in our city, because I think it is so important that young black boys and black girls see superstars who look like them, who are celebrated in our city, and have a chance to be inspired by the exhibits that are there, and the culture that is shown there and on display there. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I think there's probably, out of every 1,000 country music stars that have, or stars, I use that term loosely. Out of every 1,000 country music artists that have come out of Nashville, surely at least a few of them found inspiration at the Country Music Hall of Fame or at the Johnny Cash Museum or any of those places.
Musicians Hall of Fame there at Municipal Auditorium.
Municipal
which
Auditorium.
Is the songwriters and musicians. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. So, every museum experience is a little bit different too. Not all of them are going to impact you the same. Some are just enjoyable, and some are truly unforgettable. So
let's talk a little about those impactful moments. Can you think about an exhibit that really impacted you in some way? What's a museum visit that you've had that really made you say, wow, I'm changed after seeing this? I'll tell you one I haven't done, and that's the Holocaust Museum. I specifically haven't gone because I just don't know if I can handle the emotion of that. That's when I constantly hear in DC people saying it really impacted their lives.
Yeah.
When I think about the museums I've been to that that had a movement on me, it was the National Museum of African American Music in
Yeah.
Nashville. That was my most impactful when I got into that opening film, and you find out that so many of the songs that we have today. And if you've listened to the podcast Dolly Parton's America, and you find about African roots and how so much of bluegrass, which was the seminal piece for country music, it came from African roots. And when you listen to them parallel wise, and that's all in this museum,
Yeah.
and you start going, okay, well, we wouldn't have, white artists like Justin Timberlake and Eminem, but that all came from Black history.
Yeah.
And then before Black history, that came from African roots.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about impactful when you see that piece.
Yeah.
I have to say that was a big movement for me.
For me, the most impactful exhibit I've ever seen was in DC at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And it was, I got to see some of the bindings that were used on slaves as they were shipped across the sea. And to see, they had this replica of how closely packed together they would have been on their voyage across the sea. And seeing that was just to think that there are, not that long ago, there were people who were treated that way.
Yeah.
Was just super, super impactful to me, and really gave me a deeper appreciation and understanding of the fact that the fight still goes on, and the fight's not finished for equality, and for civil rights for all people. Of course, there are still impacts through the generations that have survived, and the people who were slaves and had children, and then grandchildren, and then great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. Those people deserve, and this is probably a controversial statement, but I think about the word reparations, and that's what comes to mind. And I know that's like I said, a pretty controversial subject, and not a lot of people want to talk about it. I'm not scared to talk about it, but that was probably one of the exhibits that had the greatest impact on me. Where I started loving museums was as a child in middle school. We took a field trip to and I don't even think it exists anymore, but it was kind of like an adventure science center in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Okay.
And I I vividly remember putting my hand on one of those big metal balls that makes your hair stick up.
Yeah.
I remember that. I have very, very fond memories of that trip. I remember getting to see the way that a volcanic eruption happens, because they had this simulator where you would crank this hand wheel, and it would cause this red dyed goo that they had to burst out of a volcano. It was all just really, really cool and inspiring, and I think that's probably where my love for museums comes from.
Well, and I think museums are best when they tell great stories.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of museums drop the ball on that, but there's one museum that I think about when I think about storytelling, and it's very near and dear to my history because my father worked there. In Oak Ridge, Tennessee, was where the Manhattan Project was. That's where the first atomic bomb was built. And about 2 hours east of Nashville, they have opened where my father used to work, at K25, which was the code name for the Manhattan Project. They opened the K25 History Museum. And the storytelling, Zach, is insane. I want to take you over sometime.
Okay.
I'd love to take you into the McAdoo Historic Center.
Okay.
Over in and there's so many I want to take you over there.
Yeah.
But when you walk in, you're treated as if you're joining this science experiment to build the bomb, and you're sworn into secrecy. They give you a security clearance. You get a security card you're not allowed to keep, and then you walk through. And your first stop in the museum is them giving you orientation of confidentiality, and then you walk through you go through the locker room where you've got to change into your hazmat suits, all this stuff. The storytelling there, Zach, is unbelievable. And I find that the newer museums that have been done in the past 10 years, like again the Nashville Museum of African American Music, they nail storytelling. Have you seen one that sticks out to you for storytelling?
I think the National History Museum, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum.
Natural history.
The Natural History Museum, because getting to see
timeline laid
Yeah,
out.
it is. The way that it's laid out is it's a very timeline and chronologically ordered museum. So you start with, like rocks and how the earth was formed,
Yeah.
and then you get into the different animals that existed throughout all of the different periods and eras of the earth, and the Cretaceous era, and all of these other eras. I shouldn't have said that one because that's the only one I know.
It's fine.
And then getting to see modern day animals, and also the way that they talked about animals that have gone extinct was really, really fascinating. And I think, hopefully that message hits home for people that are going through there who are maybe from places where conservative doesn't mean conservation. And I think learning that even in the past 30 years, we have lost as a species, humanity has lost hundreds, if not thousands, of other species on this planet due to climate change and deforestation and overfishing, over-farming, over-harvesting, fracking, frack away, Rue, and the you know what that's from?
Of course I know.
Okay, and that was kind of sobering as well. But you have to tell those stories, and I think the best museums are good storytellers, and it's a fine balance between educating and telling stories.
And creativity and curiosity.
Yeah.
They get both. So let's wrap this up as we always do with some Nashville Rathers.
All right. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay. Would you rather do art? I want to guess this for you before you answer. I think I know the answer to this one. Art museum or history museum?
What do you think?
I think art.
I would rather do history, actually. Yeah.
You can throw me on that one.
Yeah. I do love a good art museum. Going to the National Gallery of Art in D.C., I got to see all of the famous painters and
you loved
artists,
that day.
and it was beautiful.
You were texting me constantly.
Yeah. I took 10,000 pictures that day too. What about you?
Are you history?
Yeah.
Art kind of. I went to MoMA in New York, and I enjoyed going, but it just kind of bores me, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you rather do a guided tour or explore on your own?
Explore on my own, which is different from what we talked in another Nashville Rathers about being teamwork, craft making, or not. And for me, I want to be left alone. When I was in Thailand, I got to something that everybody wanted to do. I was by myself, but it's something that in TripAdvisor everybody wants to do. I didn't like it. I stayed for 5 minutes. I already paid my money. I was like, I don't have to stay because I'm buying by myself.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love about being by myself.
Nice.
I think I know the answer, but you go ahead too.
I want to be guided.
You want to be guided?
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
But the only reason I want to be guided is because I want the experience to be with someone who knows exactly what they're talking about and can tell the stories of the art. Like, for instance, if I'm going through an art museum, it's one thing to just go around and look at it and appreciate it as a layperson, but it's another thing altogether to have a person who knows the history and can tell you about the artist and where it was made and all those kind of things. So,
okay. So, would you rather see one famous masterpiece or many smaller exhibits?
Probably one famous masterpiece. I think.
You don't take what I'm about to say because I'm about to say the same thing.
Yeah, with Arden.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
So when Arden talked about going to Italy and getting to see one of the Da Vinci sculptures that were made,
the sculpture, yeah.
And he talked about it and how when he stood there for 10 minutes just with tears streaming down his face because it was so hard to accept the beauty that was in front of him. And so I think, I would love to go and see one thing that is like, oh my God, I'm looking at this. I've heard about this all my life, and now I'm here standing in front of it. And I think that would be cool. What about you?
Same exact way, because I think if it is so significant that it stands alone, that's going to be a core memory that goes into your brain forever.
Mm-hmm. Then what were you going to say?
That was it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That is that moment that it's so special that it gets to stand by itself, like the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
That's super duper special.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I didn't. This wasn't a museum experience that I had, but while I was working in Hawaii, I got to see a volcano erupt. I got to see lava with my own two eyes in front of me for the first time in my life, and the only time I've ever seen it in my life. And very few people get that experience. I mean, we see lava on TV, and we see, when there's an explosion, volcanic eruption in Hawaii, the helicopters go around, and you're laughing because
I'm laughing because when I went to Japan, you were like, do you secretly want to have an earthquake?
Yeah.
That's why I'm laughing.
What was so funny is that, you were going, and I was like, what is something that you could only experience in Japan, or that you're more likely to experience there than you are here? And we both were laughing about it, because I was like, it would be so cool if you got to experience an earthquake.
And it would be.
And you were like, yeah, I kind of want to.
It's horrible. It's like coming to Tennessee and saying, I want to be in a tornado. No, you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you rather do an interactive museum or a traditional gallery?
I get bored easily in these things. I have to have interactivity. I want to have that kinetic feel. I want to be able to touch things. I don't like the germiness of it.
Yeah.
I always want to keep clean wipes with me and all. But I think you're traditional.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to be touching things that
opposite.
everybody has been touching, and I'm kind of a germaphobe. Like whenever we're out with Mike and Esther, especially when they were younger, and they would, and this is all children, when they walk around and they just touch things and they put their hands on doorknobs and handrails, and then instinctually they're just somehow always putting their fingers in their mouth.
Yeah.
I was always like, no, you got to go wash your hands. Please go wash your hands, because I am kind of a germaphobe. So.
Mm-hmm. So, would you rather learn something new, or would you rather have quiet reflection?
I think both can kind of go hand in hand. I think, to go back to the Museum of African American History and Culture, I told you the different levels of the museum, and when you get up to the very tip top, the last thing before you exit, and there's an option for you to not enter into this space and just go out back into the main lobby, but you can go into this space. And it is a waterfall coming out of the ceiling in the shape of a square, and a completely soundproof room with just benches all in there, so that you can sit and process what you just experienced. And I cried some while I was in there, because it was just like, wow, oh my gosh. So what about you? Learn something new or reflect on it?
I want to learn something new. I want my brain going.
Yeah.
It's going what kind of mood I'm in, but most of the time I'll be wanting to learn something new. So, that's probably the most museum conversations we've ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Museums are a great place to find some curiosity, to discover something new, maybe a new passion, a new hobby, a new interest. And yeah, it's one of those things that I highly encourage everybody to go do. Check out all the museums that we have here in Middle Tennessee. There's just so many.
There's great value in it. I mean, if you're going to be coming here, if you're going to move here, or if you're already living here, you got to know our area.
Yeah.
You got to know the good and the bad, and those museums tell the story of the good and bad, and go experience them.
Yeah, sometimes the best way to understand the world is to walk through a room full of its stories.
Just like here in Nashville and Beyond. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or real estate advice. Listeners should always consult licensed professionals for guidance specific to their situation. Brian and Zach Copeland are licensed real estate agents with Compass, 615-522-5100. Music Dusty Boots by Eco Leaks, Nashville and Beyond, copyright 2026.